What's up, guys? We are back with another Dinosaur Battlefield review from AxyToys, and we're taking a look at, quite literally, the big one today. We're taking a look at the T-Rex, the Carnivorous King, and I thought we were taking a look at the big one when we looked at the Carnotaurus Leader. This guy is a whole different thing. It's massive, it's huge, and it does come in a little bit of a different style packaging. It's also much bigger because this thing is enormous, but you've got just sort of a standard window box this time around, no flap like the others have. So you've got him there in the window. There's also this strip that runs around the package with a little bit of extra artwork. There's some artwork on the spines, and then the back of the box gives you a bunch of product shots showcasing how this guy looks when he's fully covered in his armor, as well as like some warnings for the package and the figure itself. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package. This is our AxyToys T-Rex, the Carnivorous King, as the box calls him. This thing is crazy. This thing is absolutely wild, and as you're seeing it now, it's kind of like in its one of its final configurations. There's a lot of different options when it comes to this figure in terms of what it's capable of, how you can dress him up. You know, you don't have to go all out. You can go halvesies if you want. He's got a cape as well. He's got different options for headgear in some ways, things like that. There's a lot of interoperability when it comes to this figure, and there is also a fully usable base figure underneath that is also going to be sold as well. So you'll be able to get, you know, kind of like naked T-Rexes, but then you've also got this guy to be like your main boss or whatever you want him to be. As far as kind of demoing articulation, I'm going to actually strip him down so you can see how the entire body works. It will, of course, be different when you have everything on him. Some stuff is going to be hindered. There's really no way around that, but I want to demonstrate exactly what this body is capable of. And then you'll be able to have a good idea of what you might want to put on or not put on when it comes to actually displaying him and posing him around and doing crazy stuff with him. So here he is without any of his stuff on, no armor, none of that getup, nothing. He is butt naked. And again, this is going to be the optimal way to move him around. Nothing's going to get in the way. Everything this figure is capable of, you can do now. He is still really mobile with all of the armor on, but it is going to be more difficult to actually pose him. Not necessarily because everything is hindered, but because it's just harder to hold the damn thing. There is a lot of stuff that sort of gets in the way, and this is true for the other Axy dinos as well. It's not really anything too crazy, but this is going to give you a really good idea of exactly what this body is capable of. So as far as moving him around, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff here. There's a lot of range. The head is really interesting. So to start, we do have a moving jaw, so the mouth does open. But it's kind of a weird system here. So there is a ball peg socket right here that allows him to move side to side and a little bit up and then down. Really nice. And then there is another double ball peg back here that connects into this socket up here. So it allows him to move his head further to the side. So like that's pretty good side to side range. He also does have swivel as well. The place that he's probably lacking the most is going to be up, but it's still pretty decent just based on how that neck actually moves. And then when you engage all of it, he looks down really well also. Now, I kind of mentioned this with some of the other Axy dinos before. This is one of those weird instances where like the figure is hard to look at like head on because you don't see the eyes. And this is another instance of that too, because the head is long and juts forward out of the body. It's just, you know, a design thing. Arms go all the way out, and they are tight but super smooth. They swivel. There is a small butterfly joint here. You're not going to get much use out of that, I don't think. You do have a bicep swivel. We've got single jointed elbows, and they swivel, but they're super deep to the point where they are at least 90 degrees. So that's really good. And then you've got a ball hinge wrist, so all the way around and then up and down. He does have a tail back here, and this is the same kind of tail that the Carnotauruses do in the line. I don't really like it. It's this sort of plug system, so it's just like a switch almost that has a ratchet in it and allows you to go up and down. The tail is also bendy, but it really only goes to about here. It doesn't really bend all that well without like some extreme pressure on it. It does, however, work to cement this guy down. You know, it's basically a third leg. It does work really well, though. Torso is, I think it's a double ball peg, or it's at least a ball peg going up. You've got really good tilt side to side. Backwards, okay. Forward is okay as well. This is also a swivel point. And then you've got probably just a single ball peg down here at the waist. You've got a little bit of added tilt there's where you're going to get a little gappy, but nothing too crazy. And then forward, you know, he can sort of lurch forward like that. And then he can go backwards really, really good if you want him to like rear up and, you know, yell or something. Legs go out only about that far. Still pretty okay. I mean, they're big legs. They go forward, but you are going to have to twist them to make that happen. He does have a thigh twist. We've got double jointed knees with some crazy, crazy range on them. Like that's nuts. There's tons and tons of movement on these legs and this body in general. And then down at the feet, let's do it on this one. He's got really, really good hinges. Really, really nice rocker. Now I'll go back to the hinges. They're really, really tight, but in like a I'm not worried about him falling down kind of way. They move really well, but they are super sturdy. And then each of these toes is independently articulated. And I'm not sure how much use I'm going to get out of those. They hinge and swivel, but there's some really nice joints in there. Just everything about this guy feels really, really good. And if anything, it's like the best moving of these figures so far. And at this point, this is the third one that I've reviewed. And the first two moved really well. But even for this thing being so massive, it's just so smooth and has so much potential. Now, again, you know, when you start doing stuff like this and you start bolting things onto his back and you start dressing him up, you know, of course, things are going to move differently and they're going to get hindered a little bit. But even with a pauldron on, he still moves really well. The bigger issue for me is just the fact that once you get all that on there, it can be a little difficult to actually handle him. Like there's a lot of stuff in between you and the figure, but otherwise, the articulation and range on this figure is pretty gnarly. I think the main area of focus for this guy is truly going to be just the way he looks. Again, there are going to be multiple instances of this figure. There is a naked version, and then there is this one that has all of this armor. And, you know, he doesn't look like this when you get him out of the box. He is mostly naked when you get him out. And just like with the first Carnotaurus and the Carnotaurus leader, you do have to put him together, basically. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to put on here. And in that same vein, again, you know, all of this is removable because this is the naked figure, you know, dressed up, basically. So he has all of this stuff that you do have to sort of bolt on in many ways. And just like the other figures, it can be a little challenging. You know, you have to figure out where certain stuff goes because there are no instructions on where all of this stuff goes. You have to use the product photos. And for the most part, it's not too hard once you figure it out. You'll see where these little bits and bobs, you know, like this little guy here, these horns, these little spikes, these tassel-y things, the necklace, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you are going to have to put on, but it makes for a just wild-looking figure. And I can't stress enough here the cool factor. This is a rad-looking action figure. And not only is it, you know, incredibly massive and have a ton of presence and, you know, still surprisingly moves really well, all of this armor that you put on here is just so well done. We have, you know, things like functioning belt buckles and things like that. You've got the clasps all over the gauntlets and the pieces down on the legs. The belt is removable. The loincloth is removable. The helmet is removable, and we'll talk about that in a minute because the helmet itself is its own little thing. He's got, you know, this fully massive wired cape, which is okay. The cape is all right. It does have, it kind of has like a really rigid wire in here because of how big it is. So it can be, you know, a little bit finicky when you try to pose it, but it is really nice and it is just as long as the figure is tall. You do have the fur plume at the top, which you don't have to use this cape. It just connects with these S-hooks like many of the other stuff does. So you can pop this thing off if you want to. You can take this off and then you can just have him without it. I kind of prefer him without it. I guess it sort of depends on what you're going for, really. There's a lot of variation when it comes to this guy in terms of what you can do. You can have him naked, you can take the cape off, you can do all sorts of stuff like that, but it is a really big piece. And again, you know, it's got that fur accent on there, which I do really like. That's kind of cool. But again, the name of the game is going to be putting him together, all of this stuff. And if you're buying this version, you know, this is how you're going to want him to look, right? You're going to want him to be this way. And there's just so many little things on this figure that really make him pop, from these armor plates to the colors. Of course, you know, I have the red version, so he has this red that kind of skews purple in many areas. Color scheme, so he's really bright and vibrant in many ways from what you might expect a dinosaur to stereotypically look like. But I think he looks really awesome here. Tons of sculpt, tons of detail. Taking that cape off, of course, you can see the back. Decent paint job here. It is just sort of like, you know, kind of haphazard, but it looks all right. The tail looks really good. It is also pretty useful for stability as well. It's not necessary, but it does pretty much just sit on the ground because while it is wired, it's not the most wired thing in the world, and that hinge is largely useless. Probably don't need, I would say we don't necessarily need that on every figure like this. But he does look really awesome. The paint is really nicely done. There's tons of shading, tons of sculpt all over here. I really like the finish on the armor. I like the variance in pieces as well. So in terms of like, you know, little different kinds of bones, from this big bone cod piece to all of these little pieces to this one here. So there's like, you know, this big avian skull right there. You've got kind of like trophies that are on his body, things of that nature. The big pendant on the chest. It does, and I'll, you know, to kind of talk about the flip side of this, it does make him very, very busy. This guy is very, very busy. So in many ways, it can be kind of hard to figure out where your eye's going to go. I feel like when I look at this figure, my eyes immediately go to the head sculpt, and it's kind of a good and a bad up there. I think the figure overwhelmingly looks tremendous, and I'm so happy that with this thing, like, it is so much fun to just mess around with and sort of look at it. The head is really, really, really busy though, and it's got this 2-stage helmet system. So this helmet actually just sits over top of the head, and there is an elastic band underneath that just cinches it to the neck, like an actual helmet almost in many ways. So it's just sort of sitting there over top of his head. And then you have this Triceratops skull as like a, you know, a topper to it, which honestly, it does look really awesome. It doesn't connect all that well. It's just got a little post on the inside that fits in top of one of these holes up here on top of his head. And it just sort of sits there. It's kind of a tenuous situation. I know they have said for this one in particular, because this is not final, I don't believe. They're trying to fix how this connects. It sits fine, but it seems to be a piece that is a little bit worrisome in some ways. But I think it looks really cool. I also think he looks maybe just as good, if not better in some instances, without it. And without it, you do have other options. You can take these little extra horn pieces. And I'm not going to plug them in too tight, just, you know, on the whim here. But you can do something like that, and it fills those holes that are in the top, and it gives you a second display option. And I really like this. I get like kind of like a warlord vibe out of this guy when he looks like this in particular. So, you know, I'm kind of leaning on many instances to have no Triceratops, no cape when it comes to this guy. Like, this could almost be like a shield or another gauntlet on him too, if you could figure something out like that. But even so, even with some of these small gripes, and they're not even really gripes, they're just, I like to have him dressed up this way versus dressed up that way. I think he looks awesome. The paint is great, the sculpt is great, and again, all of this stuff, despite the fact that it can be a little cumbersome to actually play with him and put him together, once you have him all assembled and dressed up how you want, this guy looks awesome. Now, as far as size comparisons go, we're going to start with the other AxyToys dinos that I've already got. So this is the original release, Carnotaurus. This is the relatively recent Carnotaurus leader. They're basically the same figure, and as you can see, the T-Rex absolutely towers over these guys. I mean, he's huge in every way. Height, bulk, girth, width, depth, all of it. I mean, even weight. You know, like I said, he weighs over 2 pounds. This thing is huge, in line and out of line. So let's do some other stuff. So let's move this guy aside, and let's do Mythic Legion's Ogre. These are very, very comparable. Let's take this one aside, and let's do Silverhawk's Monstar from Super 7. You know, this is like the biggest action figure out right now, really. He's humongous, and he's still quite a bit taller, but not a whole lot taller. Maybe just a head, roughly. And let's take these guys aside, and we'll do some other stuff, smaller stuff. Let's do a Figuarts. There is Superhero Piccolo. Let's take this guy aside. Let's do Marvel Legends. Here is Banshee. And let's pull Piccolo aside, and let's do a NECA Turtle. Here's Leo. And let's pull Banshee aside. Let's do one more. Let's do a Masterverse figure. Here is Faker for, you know, another 7-inch type of figure. So as you can see, this thing is humongous. It's big in every way, front to back, side to side, top to bottom, even when it comes to weight. Big, big monster figure. Now, as far as accessories goes, this guy comes with, well, a lot of stuff in the box, right? There's a whole outfit, an array of stuff that gets attached to this figure. I'm not so sure I'm really going to consider that an accessory because it's the focus for this particular version of this figure. You know, they're selling him naked, you're buying this one because you want all of this stuff. His actual accessories are weapons and hands. He has the style posing hands on him in the box. You get a set of gripping hands. No fists. I kind of feel like fists would have been good here. But we do get some really cool weapons. They're really wild in terms of design in general. The first of which is this big monster right here. So it's like a double-sided thing, but it is modular also. So you get this curved blade, and then you get this crazy like axe type of deal. It is a softer plastic, which really helps when it comes to putting this in the hands. Tons of texture, tons of detail, a lot of sculpt. There is a pitting and broken, craggy texture to it. You've got blood splatter all over the ends, but you can pop it apart here at the middle, and you get this little peg that can be used with another piece that I think this might be a bonus. I know one of the listings out there mentions a bonus, and this thing is not included in the tray. And it's not in the promo picks either. This is included separately in the box. It's this big, jagged, spiked club. And you can use it the same as the others. So you can connect them to make a larger set of weaponry. Some of them work better than others. I kind of feel like this one works really well with the axe in particular. And then this thing, kind of on its own. But you can also pair them both up. So they all work, and these two can kind of meet in the middle. But I really like these. And again, they're very big, they're very textured, they have a lot of paint on them, they've got that blood splatter detail. Not to mention the fact that these are very versatile when it comes to using them with other lines too. So he has a handful of things. Like, there's not an actual great deal of what I would consider true accessories here, but there is undeniably a large amount of stuff in this box that beefs up this T-Rex into this version. And then of course you do have your weaponry and a couple hands. So yeah, overall, I really like this guy. I'll go as far as to say that this is my favorite of the AxyToys Dino guys at this point. And it's not too much of a competition either. I think this is the clear winner. The base body moves so well. Again, articulation is going to be hampered by all the stuff that you're putting on there, but I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone. He looks tremendous. The size is so good. All of the armor bits just make him look incredibly menacing, not to mention have a ton of detail. And then he does have a handful of really solid accessories when it comes to those weapons. But this thing is just fun. It's big, it's bulky, it's beefy, and it's really well put together. So that's going to do it for this look at the AxyToys Carnivorous King T-Rex. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.